And we are live. We are live. Hello and welcome to today's issue of 9 Years Podcast Summer Sunday Night Live. I'm hosting this evening and I'm joined by Anne-Marie Godfrey.
Hello, John. Good evening. I love the addition of summer there, the summer Sunday Night Live. It is definitely feeling that today. And I 100% do not look as sunburned on the screen as I am in person. Refereeing yesterday, I have got some interesting sunburn marks, usually what-shaped.
Yeah, it is the first time we've had to say summer on one of those introductions, and it's not felt out of place. It's definitely starting to feel a bit more like summer than it has done over the last few weeks. Also joining us tonight is Robert Boyce. Rob, thank you for joining us.
Hello, George. How's it going, mate?
Thank you. And also, the first guest this evening is Michael Hamilton, Academy Manager at AFC Wimbledon. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Hi, George. Thank you for having me. And 48 hours ago, I'm not too sure the summer would have said summer. The weather was very different, but yeah, we got a bit of sun today, so good.
Yeah, no, it's definitely starting to feel that way. And obviously, big game coming up tomorrow, which we'll talk about later on. But Mike, obviously having you on just for the first question, just talk us through what it's been like at the Academy this year. Obviously a big year on and off the pitch at the Academy. So just talk us through what it's been like this season.
Very, very challenging. We were just talking about the other day, myself and the Academy management team, and a lot of us are in new roles. I came in as Academy manager about, just over a year and a half ago. And probably the two things you don't want in your first year is as an audit, and we had an audit. And the second thing, which is a world pandemic, which no one really knew what they're dealing with. But it's very challenging. We obviously entered the start of the season not at full capacity. Only the under 18s and under 16s were in. Sorry, I knew that was happening. Yeah, only the under 16s and under 18s were in. So we kind of, the younger boys followed the education program in the country. So a lot of when the schools were off, basically the younger boys were off. But the 18s were able to follow the same schedule as the first team. So it's very different. But one thing we like to think we've achieved this year is, we've been very creative in still trying to pursue our targets and still trying to develop the boys. And we've got a very good development team behind us. So, in the most respectful way, we're glad it's over because it's like last season just rolled in from the previous season. So we can all reset and go again.
So obviously you mentioned the global pandemic and not having the boys in perhaps as much as you'd like, especially in the younger age groups. Just how much of an impact has that played? Because obviously a lot of players have lost effectively 18 months of their development. How difficult has that been when it's come to things like contract renewals and offering players scholarships?
It's been very difficult. One thing we've done really well is planned. So, you can only adapt and plan as much as you can. So it's not ideal, So as an example, the 15s down, they've only had 6 weeks of football this year, so it's in 2021. But what we've done is made sure we retained all our boys. We made sure no one was released in the program, but we gave them clear development targets to work towards in the new season. And with the scholars and pros, it's slightly different because they've been running for the majority of the season, so it's been slightly different. But it's the same for everyone, so we don't complain.
So obviously, one of the main highlights, I think, for everyone at the club this year has been the Academy winning the Youth Alliance Cup. Back in, when was that? December?
November, I believe. November, yeah. December. Yeah.
Just how big was that for the Academy as a whole? How much of a boost was it to actually get a major piece of silverware?
It was brilliant. We've set ourselves a target as an Academy management team of being a nationally recognised programme, and that looks different in different ways, So producing international footballers helps us achieve that. Having boys in the first team obviously helps us achieve that. And adding silverware, it's just icing on the cake. So, we don't shy away from the fact that we do pride ourselves on winning. But when we say winning, we don't mean winning as per the result. We mean winning in the sense of giving you all every day, making sure you're working towards your development targets, utilising every resource and bit of information around you. And we're pretty confident if your day-to-day habits and your day-to-day behaviours are on point, then the results will come. So, us winning the cup was was massive, and I'm really hoping tomorrow. I know it's going to be a massive challenge, but I'm really hoping tomorrow we can add to that.
And obviously you touched on it there, but the first team, not long after that Youth Alliance Cup, Robbo was promoted to first team manager. Rob Tuvey joined him as a first team coach. How do you think that's impacting the relationship between the first team and the academy, having a stronger link between the two?
It's been massive. I read recently you sometimes get friction between the first team and an academy, and I disagree with that completely. Of course, naturally, when you're trying to produce, when you're trying to achieve goals in any environment, there's going to be an element of friction or an element of disagreements, but I think that's healthy. But I can't think of one successful academy in this country, Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal, where the relationship between the academy and first team is bad. We are there to serve the first team, and we are both here to represent and serve the club. So having Rob and Robbo in those roles is pivotal. It does make conversations and processes and planning a lot smoother. Like I kind of alluded to before on the call a couple of weeks ago, Robbo's been so pivotal in where we are and who we are today. And, Rob, I suppose over the last couple of years has got a bit of headlines as the under-18s head coach, but his growth and his development will be there for all to be seen next season. And having those two in an area where they want to see youngsters play, they want to see youngsters develop, they want to progress, and it's not a token gesture. The boys have got to earn it, but no, it's massive.
It sounds like from what you're saying, I mean, it's not something I've considered before, but actually it's really interesting from your opinion on like how academies and the first team, that those interactions can vary club to club. But from what you're saying, it sounds like the academy has the way that you set up with the values and everything you said around the cup success earlier in the season. That sounds like that could have massively influenced the first team in terms of the way that you had that culture and those values and the way that the academy is run and set up. And obviously that's been transitioned in through Robbo. But having kind of had that around the place, I expect that probably would have impacted the first team. I don't know. Just from what you're saying, it could well have been from, going from the academy up as opposed to the other way.
Yeah, and I suppose that's I don't know what it's like from the outside the last few years, but we've been massively built on values and culture and processes, and I know Robbo started speaking about it when he got the job. But what he meant by that is if you're reactional and you don't live and breathe what you say you do, and you don't stick to the plan and always think long term, then you will get unstuck. And we've been big on that in the academy for years, and Robbo's been a massive part of that. A lot of the first team now are youngsters, so the messages aren't new to them. In fact, Robbo's had some really productive meetings recently, and you see some of the more senior pros going, okay, this is new, but you see a lot of the younger players going, oh yeah, we know this is fine.
This is straight. This is normal routine. Yeah, that's what it's interesting. Exactly,
and it doesn't just apply to football. It doesn't just apply to academies. I think it applies to any successful business. You've got it all. You've all got to be in it together. You've all got to be achieving and striving for the same target and for the same goal. And as AFC Wimbledon have shown, when you've got a group of people who want to head in one direction, it's impossible to stop.
Hello, Michael. Question for myself is, what are the players feeling for tomorrow? Obviously, we've got the cup final and we've got very young side tomorrow. I mean, predominantly made up of under 17s, some under 15s. Do they see it as a good challenge, and how do you feel about the game? Do you expect to win the game, or is it more development of the players and get experience for them?
It's a bit of mixture, really. It's a great opportunity for them to experience. When you go in, if you make a debut in the first team of the last few years, you're making your debut in a side that's fighting relegation, where a crowd might be on your back. So how do we as an academy prepare boys for that? And it's very difficult to recreate and falsify situations. So situations like tomorrow, where they have to step up against more senior players, where the odds might be against them a little bit. Those little things do add up. You know, I'm not trying to make excuses. Like I was saying before the call started, we stopped about 10 days ago. And we actually tried to get the final moved to next week because the quarterfinal and the semi-final hadn't been played on the other side. But the cup said the cup had to be finalised by tomorrow, which, you know, it is what it is. So we had to pull the boys back off their holidays and get a couple of days training into them late last week. But we don't make excuses. It is what it is, you know. We're AFC Wimbledon, and you put a challenge up in front of us and we'll attack it. And, you know, I really do hope I'm sitting here in 24 hours' time with, you know, having added another bit of silverware to us. But if not, you know, it's not going to take us off our long-term plans. You know, we've got boys who will be better for the experience, boys who in the next 18, 24 months, hopefully will be playing for the first team. And whatever you see in 2-3 years' time will be because of what they're doing now.
Just building on something Anne-Marie was saying earlier, that link between first team and academy. Obviously, this year we've seen Rudy and Ibe really break into the first team, make immediate impacts. How much of a role and how much of an influence is that having on academy? How much is that boosting morale amongst the under 18s and under 16s to believe that they could be the next player on that development pathway?
Absolutely massive. But, you know, these opportunities aren't given, they're earned. You know, and with Robbo and Rob being at the helm now, boys aren't just going to be given token appearances and token games. They have to earn them. And like we always say, you know, our role as an academy is to deliver and create an environment that allows you to maximize your potential. Our job isn't to make you a professional footballer. Our job is to produce professional footballers, but it's not to produce you as a professional footballer. It's to create an environment where, you know, you're supported as a player, as a person, and as a student. You know, so when you're away from us, when you're at school, and it's down to you to maximize that. So having your Rudies and your Ayubs, you know, it's pivotal because it does make these conversations a lot easier. You know, it does give boys a little bit more of a stimulus and a motivation. But they've earned it. You know, they're talented boys, and they've earned it. And especially in someone like Ayub's case, who, you know, he's fought through so many obstacles and challenges in the past to get where he is. And, you know, he in the most respectful way, and not being respectful to others, but, you know, he has been almost dismissed, you know, and if it wasn't Robbo in charge, who knows, he might have been dismissed, which is funny when you're sitting here and he's just one young player of the month. But that is how fickle, I suppose, this footballing world is. So all you can do as a footballer trying to make it is roll your sleeves up, work hard, and leave no excuses.
So we're getting a couple of questions coming in live. The first one is from Adam Hillman, and he just wants to know, when you're doing analytics and performance reviewing players, how much of that is computer analytics and stats and looking at specific things regarding like possession or set piece data? How do we analyze that as an academy?
We have stats, but we're not led by stats. Stats are there to support and to consult, not to lead. You know, I think your best measure are your eyes. I'm not being rude. You know, I spoke to John McDermott not too long ago, and it was quite clear. If you went on a stats-based process, Harry Kane wouldn't have made it through the academy. You know, Jesse Lingard wouldn't have made it through Man United's academy if you went purely on stats. So stats are there to support and to consult. So do we use them? Yeah, we do measure them, but at the same time, you know, if you went by stats, then things would look very different.
And another question just come in from Dobtronic. He just wants to know, how much are we able to look at other clubs' academies and learn from them, learn from their processes, and try and implement that into our own structure?
We've done that a lot. You know, myself and Robbo, obviously the last 18 months or so have been difficult because of COVID. But prior to that, myself and Robbo were very aggressive in that field. You know, we made sure we went out. You know, we visited Brentford. So seeing Brentford getting promoted yesterday isn't a surprise. I was fortunate to go out to Barcelona. As you might know, you know, we went over to Japan, which is more about culture and more about environments. So we do that a lot. And one thing Robbo definitely wants to do with the first team staff, and one thing I want to do with the academy team is get us out and looking and experiencing different environments. But it's not always about, you don't always go to environments and pick up things to do better. Sometimes you go out and it just reaffirms what you're doing. You know what you're doing. And we do get a lot of people who want to come and visit us for the same reasons. You know, there's no point us going to Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea. We're AFC Wimbledon. We haven't got their facilities. We haven't got their resources. So yes, we might pick, you know, I could probably go there and come back with pads worth of notes of things to do. Could we do it at Wimbledon? Probably not. So it's so important we go to, you know, facilities and environments with very similar resources to us. And I think Robbo said it in a few interviews about one thing I find. I think if you look back in the history of sport, any sport, including football, the people that make it are the people that leave no excuses and who come into work motivated every day and maximize what they have, and for that reason, as well as football clubs and football academies, individual sports environments are massive as well. So yeah, to answer your question.
Michael, has your relationship changed now Robbo's first team manager, between yourself and between him and academy? And are we playing the same system as the first team under every age group from, under 9s upwards now? Is that something we've changed, or has that always been the case?
So to answer your first question, I've known Robbo for 13 years now, and he is one of my best friends in life. But if anything, he's probably got a little bit more. He puts a little bit more pressure on me and a little bit more pressure on us. But it's brilliant. Pressure's not a bad thing. Pressure's a good thing. And he's been down to more youth team training sessions or academy training sessions and games than in 1 week than previous managers have in years. And that's not being rude. I'm just like he wants us to do well, not for him, but for us and for you guys. So yeah, we've got a very healthy relationship. We do go back and forth a little bit, but it's again, if you never had that, then you would have no care. He puts a little bit more pressure on us, which is brilliant. But it's only because he knows, now's the time to deliver. And to answer your second question, we don't completely follow the first team shape and formations. However, we do follow the same principles. And the reason why is it's very difficult. When you talk about the development program, we can go and change. Okay, so just imagine the first team playing 4-4-2. But what if in the under 18s, as an example, we haven't got the same centre forward pairing as they have in the first team? What are we trying to do? So of course you do it where possible, but it's more about principles. So when you haven't got the ball, can you try and restrict and control the game, similar to what Chelsea did yesterday against Man City? When you lose the ball, can you win it back as soon as possible? When you win the ball, can you find the most effective pass to hurt the opposition? And obviously, when you're building and when you're in possession, can you find solutions to make the most effective pass? Whether you're playing a 4-4-2, 3-5-2, those things don't matter. In fact, they matter less, because the more challenges we can give our boys, the more prepared they'll be when they go to the first team to find solutions to their challenges. You go to the first team and you play a 4-4-2 and a man gets sent off, and all of a sudden you're playing a 4-4-1. That happens. What are the solutions, boys? So the more challenges, the more problem solving we can give the boys, younger age groups, the better. But the principles are so crucial, and the principles we do follow. Yeah.
And you were saying where we're at the season, obviously after tomorrow night, it's about resetting and kind of getting your heads together for what happens next. Have you got big plans for how we adapt, or is it a case of we try and keep as much as similar as possible, or basically sort of how do we reset and go for the next season?
As an academy management team, I think it was Thursday we had a meeting and we reviewed all our targets for the season, and naturally some weren't achieved because they couldn't be achieved, but we sat down and we reviewed them, and we're over the next few weeks, when everyone's got a bit of time off, they're going to be coming forward with their new ideas for the new targets for the new season. When I say switch off and reset, I mean more just for the mental side, for the fatigue of the staff, because it's been relentless, facilities, schedules, testing. It's been a season like no other. So when I say reset, I mean like in terms of more, just switch off, get away from work, go and enjoy, your personal life, get ready to come back. But in terms of us adapting and looking to go again, like I said, with Robbo in charge, he's definitely putting more pressure on us, which is good. And that filters all the way through. And one thing you'll find with people is they really appreciate honesty. They really appreciate ownership and accountability. So, like I said, we sat down last week and reviewed our targets to reset for next season. But people like working towards things. They like pressure. They like accountability. So,
Michael Hamilton, thank you for joining us.
George, thank you. And No, thank you. And I'd really like to in the future, maybe use this forum where we get myself and other academy staff members, maybe even academy players, because ultimately the players are the program, and we got some really intelligent young boys who would do well to be on this forum and have you fire questions at them, because it's good life skill development. But it'd be good for you to see an insight into the program through their eyes as well. So no, thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll definitely be doing that next season.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Time, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Now, later in the show, in about 10 minutes' time, we'll be joined by Niall Cooper, who's going to be talking to us about Fair Game, the latest initiative by a group of directors and chairmen of various EFL clubs to try and help push the game and make it more sustainable. But before we go on to that, the big news coming out of the club this week was the news about Joe Pigott not signing a new contract. So, Anne-Marie Godfrey, just tell us your thoughts.
Saw my face. I was heartbroken when I found out. I'd had a really rubbish day anyway, and I just opened my phone and saw it and was like, oh no. I think it was kind of inevitable. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. I can't no hard feelings at all against Joe. He's been unbelievable for us, hasn't he? I voted for him for our player of the season. I think many other fans will have done as well. But ultimately, it's just the way that football is at the minute, and we've not had the best season overall, and looking at position in the table, and to have a player who scored as many goals as he has this season, we can't be too surprised that he's probably had some good offers, and a few clubs probably looking around for quite some time.
You said it there. He's been a big part of our season. He 20 goals this year. He's going to be very difficult to replace. Rob, just how do you think we go about that?
First of all, I echo Anne-Marie's thoughts as well. Like I said, 20 goals a season. His goals have really kept us up in the league, and he's been a great servant over the last 3.5 years. How we go about replacing it, I mean, at the end of the day, we've lost some good strikers over the time. We've lost Kedwell, Tom Elliott, Lyle Taylor, Pigott. So, it's going to take somebody to come in, or even somebody already here to step up. I personally expect a bit more next season from Ollie Palmer if he can stay injury-free for a whole season and get a pre-season underneath his belt. I'm excited to see what he can offer, because I think, under Robbo, he, part of the reason why our form really improved is, we had a fit Ollie Palmer playing off of Pigott. And, I'm quite excited to see what Ollie Palmer can do next season, personally.
So, obviously, Ollie Palmer, we're hoping he'll be fit for a full season this year. Do you think that we're looking for someone to play with him for this coming season, or do you think we are going to look to go back to what we saw under the first few games of Robbo's playing one up top, and therefore we're looking for maybe a second or third choice strike option, Anne-Marie?
Well, first thing I would say is going into, even though I'm absolutely gutted, and it will obviously completely change the way we play, and it's going to be a massive, massive loss. Bizarrely, there's been times when we've lost other players, like the ones that Boise's mentioned, where I've felt more like, crumbs, how are we gonna reform this? Like, I feel towards the end of the season, obviously it finished on a much more positive note than it could have done. I feel more confidence, probably because of Robbo and because of some of the players coming through. I quite like the look of Cheyan Harrison. I thought that obviously he's had very small amount of game time. But and Palmer's obviously was unbelievable towards the second half of the season. So I don't feel that kind of real dread that we've lost Pigott. I'm gutted, but I think that we have got that backup. In terms of how I think we'll play, I'm really not sure. I mean, I wonder if Palmer and Harrison, very different kinds of players. But ultimately, it really depends on what works. And I expect that, knowing Robbo, he's a bit of a scientist. He likes to experiment with things. I expect he'll do a lot of that in the summer, in pre-season. He'll try out different things and see which strikers work best with each other. But I don't feel that horrendous dread that maybe I have in the past when we've lost other players. So I don't know how you guys feel, but.
How do you feel, Boise?
I again agree with Anne-Marie. I had that horrendous dread when Lyle left, and I thought to myself, like, we're going to get relegated next season without Lyle in our team. And then, Pigott really stepped up, and, it's been a great servant to us. I mean, it's funny with Pigott because I feel like even though you know, he's been here 3.5 years, scored all them goals. I hear some fans, you know, he's a bit of a marmite for some fans who still, you know, don't rate him as highly as he deserves, in my opinion. But, you know, when you score 20 goals a season and got 18 last season, you know, I think it's been great for the club. Personally, for me, who do we replace him with, or what does Robbo do? I think we are going to have to bring in another striker. And for me, I'd like to see somebody with a bit of pace, because I think, you know, when we had a Sal and Longman in the team, you know, with their pace, you know, it really worried the defence. And I think, you know, having another option of more pace to play off Palmer would be quite exciting for the fans.
And I mean, talking about recruitment, it was something we touched on very, very briefly in last week's show. Obviously, Luke O'Neill, Shane McLaughlin and Callum Riley, the players confirmed to have left alongside Joe Pigott so far. We have still got contract offers out on Terrell Thomas and Sharon Harrison. Marie, just how big a role do you think recruitment is going to be in those key positions, assuming, of course, we can keep hold of Terrell and Sharon?
It's going to be huge, isn't it? And I know that the recruitment side of things is something that the club are really, really focused on looking at and refining. And this is kind of Robert's really big chance now to refine it further into how he wants it, and have that open communication with the club really on instilling those values from top to bottom. And a lot of that, I think, will come in the way we recruit. I expect that he'll have a huge sort of desire to bring through as many youth players as possible, because we've obviously seen that's massively benefited us this season in terms of players like Ayub. What will be interesting to see is how Robbo works with the loan market. That's, you know, something, a bit of an unknown quantity, and what his kind of thoughts on that are, whether we could get someone in again like a Ryan Longman. Because I'm right, I think Longman came in under Glyn, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan joined us last summer.
Yeah. Whether we can work with getting younger academy players from other clubs, is that something that Robbo would want to do? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see his approach to loans. I don't know if it's something he's discussed actually.
I think Robbo, one of the things he's really keen to do is to make sure we have stronger links with so-called top six clubs. It's something we haven't really ever had before in terms of loanees from big clubs, you know, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool. We haven't really had players from that level before. It's always been lower half of the Prem or predominant top half of Championships. Clubs like Brighton and Brentford. Congratulations to them, by the way, for their brilliant win the other day and their promotion into the Premier League. But I think one of the things Robbo is talking about is getting in loans from good clubs, getting high quality loanees. And I certainly think that's something that's going to be useful. I think we'll probably see maybe even England youth internationals coming in this summer, just because of how well respected Robbo is in the coaching community. So what difference do you think this is going to make, Boise, having high quality loanees from bigger clubs with maybe experience in bigger matches than those we've seen coming in from Brentford and Brighton in the past?
Yeah, I read somewhere that Robbo's already started presenting to the big clubs, the top clubs in the area. So I always find it's always exciting when we change our structure. So obviously we had Simon Bassey going out scouting for us, and when Nick Dawes came in and created a database, and now obviously we've got the football transfer committee. So I'm excited by this summer to see. I'm intrigued to see what happens, who we bring in, and with Robbo with his links to other academies and being highly respected. I'm kind of excited that we might pinch a really good Chelsea star as well, or something highly rated in the academy coming through. So it is an interesting summer. It is exciting for me what we do. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it, really, George.
So you touched on it yourself. It's going to be an exciting summer. I think it's one that I can't remember the last time we had this much optimism going into a season, considering where we finished the season before. And it's one of those things. I mean, today obviously it's a big day. It's the 5th anniversary of that Wembley final. How important is it that we get a bit of squad cohesion right at the start of next year? Because obviously that was a big part in our promotion year, having the squad come together as a unit and play for each other. How difficult do you think that could be this year if we have a squad with potentially a high number of loanees from various clubs?
I don't know if that will happen, whether we will get quite a lot of loanees. I expect, even though absolutely, I think what you and Boise have said, that he will start presenting and start opening up those communication channels with some of the bigger clubs and the bigger academies. But I think Robert will probably, again, this is just my opinion, but I think he'll try and keep that kind of tight-knit element as much as we can, like as many sort of either homegrown players or players who we bring in who maybe have played with some of the players at other clubs, because that obviously keeps that cohesion going. It was interesting, some of the players towards the end of the season, like you said, were saying it was an unbelievable dressing room. Like Ollie Palmer said things like best dressing room he's ever been in and things like that. And I expect a lot of that. I know it's cliche and we've mentioned it so many times, but those values and everything that Rob is bringing in, that will just keep going forward, and that will stick around the team, and it's becoming that culture. And it seems to, by the sounds of it, be quite like a positive environment, no sort of cliques within the squad, or that's certainly not encouraged. It's like sort of that one team approach. I think any player that comes in, like you said, Rob is so well respected in the coaching community, and word gets around. Like football is a small world, and if you hear players saying, it's a really great dressing room, and we're all really tight knit and that kind of thing. It's a kind of club hopefully people want to join, and it's exciting. We've got the new stadium. There should be that optimism and positivity to want to come in and get involved, and no one's under any illusions. It's not going for promotion next season, that kind of thing, but it's to still come in. It's so important that you're coming into that positive environment, because you've got to work in every day. You're working under those pressures. So I think that the team cohesion side of things will be on that this summer. I think we'll have from the get-go. I don't think that there'll be sort of any delay in the start of the season where we're wondering, is this team going to gel? I think that'll be one of the things on our side.
Now, obviously, one of the main talking points we normally have at this time of year is talking about who our number one is going to be the following season. I don't think we're going to be having that debate this summer, but I think it is realistic to expect a number two goalkeeper to come in, to go out on loan, to allow Matt Cox to go out on loan. So, Boise, how important is it that we get a good quality goalkeeper to come in as backup to Nick Zanev? And do you think we should be looking for someone with a bit of experience, or someone who we could maybe develop into a long-term goalkeeping option to go alongside Zanev and Matty Cox?
For me, I would like to see somebody with a bit of experience. I think, with the pandemic and a lot of footballers being out of contract, I think we might be able to pick up a decent keeper with experience, who's out of contract looking for work. I think that would be, beneficial for also both Nick and Matt Cox. But obviously, that number two coming in needs to understand that, Nick is number one and needs to push it. Obviously, he's going to need to push him all the way in training. But yeah, I think that would be beneficial, for everyone, all parties involved, and obviously Matt Cox can go out on loan. Talking of loans, one player which did catch my eye this week is, I noticed Brentford's B team player of the season was a striker. So I'm intrigued to see, we've got a good relationship with Brentford. And talking of good strikers we also lost Marcus Fultz to injury, as well. He was another one we had on, with us for a short period of time, scored a lot of goals for us. So I'm intrigued to see maybe if that's a link right there, potentially. Like I said, I'm just maybe putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 here, but, just throwing it out there.
I mean, Presley, who is that striker who has just won Brentford Beast Player of the Year? He's a very good striker. He's seen him a few times playing against us in friendly matches and for Brentford reserves. He's a very good player. He's 6'3". He's quite athletic. He's quite good with the ball at his feet. In my opinion, he'd be quite a good alternative to Ollie Palmer, which means we don't have to risk overusing him. Anne-Marie, how important is it that we do get a backup of a similar style to Ollie, to make sure that we have backups in case of injuries, or to make sure he's able to be rotated without it impacting our style of play too much, which is something that we suffered with this season?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of it's really, really important that we do have a backup to Ollie, so that we don't constantly have to keep changing that style of play. If we're set up with a system that the team are happy with, and we find one, in the first couple of months of the season, and then if Ollie does pick up an injury or isn't able to play, then we don't have to adapt too much. But then again, Robbo does say he adapts game to game and he takes it game by game. I mean, fingers crossed we keep Ollie fighting fit. But this striker, from your description of him, let's sign him up. Get him on the phone. I was just racking my brains. I can't think. I'm sure someone will say in the comments, but I can't think of a unsuccessful we've had from Brentford. They've all, certainly in the last season they've been, outstanding, and most of them have ended up first team. So I'm sure someone will come up with some memorable loanee that we've had, but any links like that is fantastic, and I expect that them going up yesterday selfishly will benefit us in terms of players that become available, because they'll want to have that League One experience.
So we will be very shortly joined by Niall Cooper, who's going to be able to, in fact, here he is now. Niall, can you hear us? Hello, Niall, can you hear us?
I can indeed. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Niall. Thank you so much for joining us. So obviously you're here to talk about the very, very exciting initiative, Fair Game. So for those people who haven't heard about it or come across it before, can you just give a brief introduction into what it is?
Sure. It is basically a collection of footy clubs all coming together to try and change the governance of football in the UK. Really small thing, George, tiny thing. Basically the wonderful Don's Trust basically said, go and see what AFC Women can do in the wider world. And off I went gallivanting, and lo and behold, we've got a whole load of clubs all now chatting away, potentially changing how football is going to look in the future, which is it's snowball, George. It's completely crazy, but great fun. I know you kind of experienced a little taster of it already last week, but it's an amazing initiative. It just shows, God, we support a bloody good club in my mind, and we're doing great things, So that's kind of where I'm at, George. I've just come back from Wembley, where this is all crazy in my mind. It's all completely bonkers. Got invited there by the EFL, and because they've heard about Fair Game. We're only 3 months old. So there I was, off smoozing the head of policy of the Premier League and the Football League, meeting a whole load of bigwigs, which just would have seemed away just even a couple of weeks ago. I think AFC Women does the impossible really well, and that's what we're doing at the moment. So it's good fun, George.
So obviously, the Fair Game is trying to get a couple of really big transformational changes to the game. Could you just maybe give us a couple of bullet points on what those changes are and what we're hoping to achieve?
Okay, the big one is parachute payments. So the idea of potentially scrapping the parachute payments and getting those all into one big pot of money that is then redistributed fairer across the football pyramid. Rewarding clubs that are run well rather than clubs that are run badly. So Fair Game clubs are looking at the idea of a kind of index, a regulation, where you kind of be scored, and the more good or well run your club is, the more likely you are to get a bigger share of cash through from Fair Game clubs, through from the central pot of money. And that's kind of where we're at. So it's for Wimbledon, it's a really exciting thing that could lead to a shed load more cash for us. I think that's a big thing. And then there's things like players' wages, and looking at whether we do a kind of proper sort of cap of that as well. There's lots of things in the mix, and it's been really interesting just to talk about it all today. I mean, we've got John Scales as our ambassador. He came up with the idea of potentially it's something called a football central bank, where all the kind of revenues of football, the kind of parachute payments, some of the TV revenue money, all that goes to there and is distributed in a much more equitable way. I think for us, it could be massive for AFC Wimbledon. It could be really, game changing in terms of the extra revenue that we can do if we can prove that we've got the right kind of sustainable model. And the sustainable stuff is also about where we stand on fan engagement, being a community club, all of those sort of things would all come into it. So I think we're really well placed to do all of that. And it's kind of dream what we can do and look about how football could be a far better run organisation for the whole thing than it is now. It's all about being fairer, George, in the end.
Do you think that obviously everything that's happened in the football world over the kind of last 4 or 5 months, or possibly even over the last few years, but it's had a huge kind of media windstorm over the last few months in particular. Do do you think that that will get the wider football community behind this, in terms of, you know, you won't necessarily have to actively go out there so much to spread the word, because there's already so many people talking about this as an issue. People will latch onto it. You won't have to sell the idea quite as much, maybe, because people are already feeling it. People are wound up with so many things in football at the moment. It's kind of self.
Especially after the ESL as well.
I think what is really interesting is that if you look at where we are with football at the moment, is there's a load of things that are going wrong. We've had the pandemic that's basically put loads of clubs, EFL clubs, on the brink of collapse. You've got the ESL, the European Super League, that made suddenly people think, right, well, the top clubs actually don't give a toss about fans anymore. And there's a whole load of owners that don't give a toss about fans. So that's kind of woken up the whole world of football to start caring. The issue that we've discovered at Fair Game, and one of the big differences that we're doing compared to a lot of other people, is that very few people have actually been developing solutions. They've all been going, it's wrong, it's all screwed, and we need to do something. But nobody's been saying what the solution is. Even Gary Neville, with his shouting for the independent regulator, which is great. If you ask Gary Neville, so what is the independent regulator? That's your end of your conversation, right? Because there's nothing beyond that. What we've been doing with Fair Game is looking for the long game. We don't want to, you know, Tracy Crouch could produce a fantastic report, but it could sit dust on a shelf, go nowhere. What we're doing with Fair Game is bring together the best minds in football. So the people who've experienced campaigning. So a lot of the kind of people that at AFC Wimbledon we know as friends of ours through previously Supporters Direct, like Kevin Ryan, Dave Boyle, but also all the people who are the leading academics in the country, and putting them all in the same room. So there's a group called the Football Collective, which is sort of the 10 to 15 top football academics in the country. And they're now all basically all advisors of Fair Game. So what happens at the end of, we're doing these workshops at the moment, and what happens at the end of each of these workshops, we basically lock the room. We have the football clubs who are signed up to Fair Game, the academics who are signed up to Fair Game, the campaigners who have worked in football for a long time. And we look at a problem, and we try and develop what is a proper realistic solution that is actually long-term achievable. And we look at presenting that in a way that's either a cut and paste rule change for the EFL or Premier League, or it's legislation if it's needed. And that's the big difference, because, you know, if we want to make real change, then having something, and we've had reviews that just sits dust on the shelf, gets nowhere. We need to actually present something that is implementable. And then couple with that, there's a big outreach we're doing to politicians to make sure that those questions keep on getting asked in the House of Commons or in Parliament, and that people speak out for it and actually back this legislation. So it's a real strong momentum across various different streams of work to make sure that actually happens and benefits and delivers real proper change. Otherwise, we're just going to be, I'm not interested in a talking shop. I'm not interested in kind of lip service. I'm not interested in just seeing those big six clubs that screw football, or like the kind of crappy owners that pay, you know, that gamble the future of their club away just to try and get one season in the Premier League so they can get parachute payments 3 more years afterwards. That's all sucks, right? That's a failed, really seriously failed model. What we need to do is look at the clubs that operate well and have community at their heart. And, like, you know, in a way, DLAG and stuff that AFC Wimbledon have done, it just, we're kind of market leaders in that. And yeah, okay, selfish Wimbledon fans just like, we need to be patted on the back and rewarded a little bit better for showing how it should be done. But there are other clubs that are in that same mindset as us. And, you know, we should be looking at how you reward good governance and clubs that do the right thing, rather than, you know, the Derby Counties, the Sheffield Wednesdays, even clubs like Reading, who are basically spending way beyond their means and risking the future livelihood of their club and their community that they support just for their 1 year in the Premier League. And if it goes wrong, then you're like, you know, how broke a Derby, how broke a Sheffield Wednesday, what happened to Bolton, you know, adios Bury and Macclesfield, you know, it's like, that's the reality. And we need to stop that happening. God, I waffle on. It's too exciting.
Niall, what can we do? What can fans do?
I think there are a couple of things that fans really can do. And that is, one, like, volunteer to help us, because we're basically after the best minds. I am not going to sit here and go, I have all the solutions, me personally. No, I definitely do not. Am I the most cleverest person in this? No, by a long stretch of the imagination. I want people to network, find the people who can really help change football and bring them to us and get them in the room so we can develop these real solutions. We need people that are really good at networking with politicians. We need people that have those connections to advocacy, have those people who can actually get our voice raised. That's really important. I'll be honest, we probably could do with some fundraisers because frankly, we're all doing this for free. I'm setting up a website, all the rest of it, as you probably know, it's not the freest thing in the world, but there are little bits that we could do to help with. Also, sign our petition. So if you go fairgameuk.org, you'll see a sign a petition stuff. Push that out everywhere. Let's get as many fans as possible signing up and it asks you to get your club to be a fair game club. So particularly in our sites at the moment, it'd be clubs like Bristol Rovers, Charlton, Tranmere, Millwall, Rochdale. Lots of clubs like that are the ones that we know are on the borderline of being fair game clubs, and we need to push them over the edge, and it's going to be their supporters that can push them over the edge. So if you know people that support any of those clubs, get onto it, spread the word amongst supporters trusts, supporters groups, anyone, just get it out there so that people really start putting the pressure on their clubs to join, because it's the numbers game. We've got 10 clubs signed up. We've been speaking to, I expect another 5 to sign up in the next couple of days. And we're speaking to another 20 odd. That's where we are at the moment. And this is all from scratch. Realise this is nothing. This wasn't even a blank sheet of paper. This didn't even exist as an idea in late January, February. We probably started thinking about this. But big credit to the Dons Trust, the new Dons Trust board, to put a bit of faith in me to try and do this and go with it. And they fully backed it. It was one of those where a load of hands will go up and go, yeah, well, virtual hands, the kind of little yellow hand that appears in the corner. And that's been great, to really kind of do it. And I think it's wonderful that we're actually making a difference. And it's us. It's an AFC women mentality. It's that kind of, I love the fact that it's like impossible isn't a word in our vocabulary, because we do crazy stuff and it comes off. And this is another one of those. It's not crazy.
No, you said there's been 10 clubs sign up, and obviously we're looking to, announce another 5. What's been the initial feedback from the other 10 clubs? Are they excited? What are they thinking? And also, are we just targeting Football League clubs, or does this include the Premier League and the National League, Conference South, Conference North, etc.?
So, Premier League would be interesting. If I got a Premier League club, I'd be astonished. Be very happy. I mean, I know we were hopeful about Brentford, so maybe. It's mainly the clubs looking below the ones who receive parachute payments and lower. Because parachute payment clubs, I mean, frankly, you're a bit like, I'm never going to get all 72 EFL clubs, right? And parachute payment clubs basically be like turkeys fighting for Christmas for them, really, because I actually kind of think, your 50 million quid you get free for the Premier League. Frankly, we need to take that and redistribute it down the pyramid, because it's totally unfair, which is true. But if you're a receipt or receiving one of those, then you'd be a bit silly to vote for us. But you never know. There might be some moral people amongst that 8 or 9 clubs that get parachute payments. But it does go down further down the pyramid. I think for me, one of the clubs I was very happy to sign up is probably is easily our lowest ranked club. It's AFC. It's Bury AFC. For any AFC Wimbledon fan, you've got a club that went through a crisis, that restarted, and they were really important for us to get on board, because it's like we're kind of saying, right, well, we know what pain you went through, and we don't want you to ever suffer that again. We've got a couple of other non-league clubs, so Maidstone United, Chester are also fair game clubs. But then beyond that, it's Cambridge, it's us, Accrington Stanley, Carlisle. There are clubs like Newport County massively involved. So those are the sort of clubs that we're doing. Luton Town are the highest ranked club that we've got. They finished 12th in the championship. So they're all on board. And I can't name the other ones that we're expecting this week. I know one is so definite I could probably get away with it, but I won't. Who are about a similar sort of level to Luton, a little bit lower. And it's exciting. And certainly, I was at the the playoff final, and both of those clubs have potentials as well today.
Why not?
I was going to say, how many clubs do you think we need to sign up to Fair Game? How many, percentage?
In my mind, if we get to minimum probably 15, be good. But I think we've got the potential to get to around the 30, 35 mark. And at that point, what was interesting is that today, when I'm at a meeting with the EFL and the Premier League, and I'm representing 10 clubs, that's weight. I'm there as the voice of 10. If the next meeting I go to, we've got a meeting lined up with Tracy Crouch for the 15th of June. If by then I can go and say I'm representing 20, 25 clubs, then that really means quite a lot. Because we're kind of saying this is what we're all kind of coalescing around. And it is things like, let's scrap the parachute payments. Let's look at celebrating and rewarding the clubs that run well, and that's us. Let's not stop giving 50, 60 million quid to a club that's got relegated. That's like, how's that rewarding success? It's totally not, is it? Or a club that, that's spending 270% of their revenue on players' wages, gambling on the fact that they might get 1 year in the Premier League. And that's Reading at the moment who are doing that. And it's just, how does that make sense? And yet they had that one season in the Premier League a few years back, therefore they're still getting their 50 million quid. If I just said 50 million quid would be enough to probably sort out and secure the futures of all the clubs in League One, League Two. That's one club, 1 year's parachute payment. Just take that away. That would be enough to secure probably the future of all of those clubs for a year. And that's where the ridiculous level of it just comes into play. And I think there are something like 12 clubs or 8 clubs or whatever that are getting parachute payments this year. So, when you times all that up, it's just in the wrong place.
So obviously you touched on it earlier. There is the meeting between Fair Game and Tracy Crouch coming up next month. She's obviously leading up the government-led review. What do you think the relationship is between Fair Game and that review, and how much faith do we have in that review that it will make the changes that our game desperately needs?
I've got, at the moment, a relatively good sense of faith in the review to produce something worthwhile. Whether it gets everything Fair Game wants, probably not. Whether it comes out, but I'm saying that I think we've got the most realistic solutions out of everybody else that's speaking to her at the moment, and certainly from the people I know that have spoken to her. They're very narrow. I was sitting next to the guy who runs Arsenal Supporters Trust, and God knows how he got an interview before us, but he did. And his was very niche about what, like tiny little bits about Premier League. I'm worried about too much Premier League voice speaking to her at the moment, if I'm being honest. But I think we've got a really good chance for it to produce something useful. But the reality is, if it is whatever she produces, two things will happen afterwards. One, it'll have to be turned into proper legislation and suggestion policy, which actually gives us the opportunity to lobby and improve it once it's happened. And two, it actually needs to happen. So you need to have the politicians who make sure and push it rather than it sits on a shelf. Both of those are things that we're placing ourselves in that space. So I think that whatever produced in October, I think it will be all right. But I think we need to push it to make it better, and we need to push it to make sure it happens, and our politicians do that. So our lobbying strand, Emery, when you were talking about earlier on, if there's something fans can do, my God, help us with that lobbying strand. That's the bit, because that's going to be the big hard work that comes out, because Tracy Crouch gets football. She's a rare politician in that sense. And I think she's going to produce something that's not crap. But it should not stop there. And that's the bit we need to really push on. And that's, Wimbledon fans, we're like campaigners. It's in our blood. That's what we've done. We fight and we battle, and we believe that we can do the impossible because we've done it. That's where I need that kind of energy and support from fans to make a difference.
So we've got a couple of questions coming in live. First one, someone wants to know what are the timelines, both for the government review and for Fair Game, in terms of what's happening when, and when can we expect to see results starting to be announced?
Okay, so if you go to our website, fairgame.uk/events, we've got a series of workshops coming up next week, the first half of which are all open to anyone. So it's Thursday and Friday next week on sustainability, and the week after on the 10th, we've got one on looking at structures of football and what we actually need to put in place in terms of governance. Then we're meeting Alison McGovern, the Shadow Minister for Sport, on the 11th, Tracy Crouch on the 15th, and then we're hoping to have announce our top line solutions on the 1st of July at the House of Commons. So that's where we are. The banner review first draft is due mid-July, and then the final review is supposed to be out in October and may well be part of the Queen's speech. So that's the timelines. In terms of what Fair Game will be doing between July and October, we'll be working up our top line solutions into kind of proper, more detailed policy and detailed analysis. That's where we hand it to our academics, and I kind of vaguely walk away because it's a bit too statty for me. And like, you know, I'm just a big ideas person, and they can do all that really good hard graft in the background. And then it will be where we then gather up all our MPs and they start hassling and doing that bit of work. So obviously we've been speaking to Siobhan, John Scales has been speaking to Stephen Hammond, and then all our other Fair Game clubs are talking to their MPs and so on. So there's lots of kind of networking that's all happening now as well. So it's a busy time, but you know, we're doing as much as we can. Obviously, anybody else wants to help, brilliant project manager. I'd love a project manager. Anyone wants to do admin? My God, bite that finger off. But there are quite a lot of us involved, but it's an organisation that is very embryonic. You know, we're meeting regularly, we're doing all the kind of stuff, we're doing all that analysis, but you know, there's this thing I've got called a proper job as well, unfortunately, that kind of keeps on getting in the way. So if you know, I don't know, anyone wants to pay me loads of money to do it and quit my job, that'd be great. But you know, that's not going to happen.
So one of the other questions we've had coming in is obviously with at least two promoted clubs getting back into the Premier League this year, the news of the Premier League going to be able to keep the parachute payments rather than giving it to the EFL for distribution. Just how wrong do you think that is, and do you think it should? That's one of the changes that should exist, where if parachute payments do stay, if those teams get promoted back into the Premier League, the money should be given to the EFL rather than being kept by the Prem.
Well, I mean, the actual rules on the parachute payments, I've been studying them because I do a bit of reading. I'll be honest. Is that if you get promoted, you don't get the parachute payment. So the parachute payment disappears once you get promoted again. It's only for clubs that get relegated. So they lose that bit, but then they get the 180 million quid for being in the Premier League. So it's like, you know, okay, yeah, I'll lose my 50 million, but I'll take your 180. So, I mean, that's what happens with those. But the whole parachute payment system is just, you know, it's just really, really fundamentally wrong, because what happens with it is you have the clubs that are gambling in the Championship and, you know, risking the future of their club for that 1 year in the Premier League to get their 3 years worth of parachute payment. And it means that a newly promoted club like Wickham or Luton from League One have got absolutely zero chance of ever getting anywhere near the playoffs unless they are like an absolutely Herculean club. You know, it's just there is, you know, basically the rest of the EFL is competing to try and finish. The highest you're going to get is 12th in the Championship, realistically, because all the rest of the clubs at the top end of the Championship are all super funded by these parachute payments. So you then end up, any club that wants to break into that top 10 or 12 of the Championship are gambling the future of their entire club's existence by massively overpaying. And it's just a ridiculous set of circumstances.
So just to wrap up this section of the show, you mentioned earlier the workshops. There was the first one on Friday. Just give us the dates for those coming up and maybe some of the guests appearing at each one.
God, you catch me out with the guests that appear on each one. They're good people, though. So Thursday the 3rd, we've got one on sustainability, and that's basically looking at what does sustainability mean in football? What do we take into that? Does it include fan engagement? Does it include like equality and diversity? Does it include, or is it just economics? Probably we're looking at all three. We've got some really good, and then in that we've got a presentation from Bury AFC, who are just talking about what happened to them. We've got the podcast expert from the Price of Football, Kieran Maguire, is speaking on that. We've got Tarek Panjar from the New York Times speaking. We've got a couple of experts from the Football Collective. There's the owner of the chief executive of Cambridge United, the chairman of Newport County, speaking at those sort of things that are happening. We have the former head of the Football Foundation, who's now in charge, sits on the Standards Committee at the House of Commons. He was chief executive of the Football Foundation for 19 years. He's on there. We've got, I think Dave Boyle's probably on one of those as well. So there's a lot of kind of stuff going on. So that's the first one. The second one's the day after, which is looking at how do we practically introduce sustainability. So that's the 4th of June, and the last one's the 10th of June, which is again looking at the structure of football. All of these you can sign up for and listen to through fairgameuk.org/events. Do tune in, do have a listen. If there are other things you think, oh my God, I'd love to get involved with doing more with Fair Game, you can go to our website. There's a help us bit on there. You can just log in into that on the homepage. And we're really keen to get people doing whatever they can to, lift us. And basically, if you've got time, then you can help. And this really is a once in a lifetime opportunity to change football. And we need to grasp it. And let's be selfish. It's only going to help a club that's bloody run well and like a good club like ours, rather than some of the shitty clubs that we can all name. I've got to add that one of our other principles is integrity, which means respecting the pyramid. So if there's one particular club that definitely doesn't respect the pyramid, then just to say that they will fail my test of joining, because I've had that question about what happens if they try and apply. And it's like, well, if you want to start in the Buckinghamshire League 5, then fine. But until you do that, then sorry, you failed our integrity test.
And on that wonderful note, Niall, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the evening, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks, Niall.
Bye-bye.
So that was Niall Cooper talking to us about the Fair Game Initiative. Anne-Marie, what are your initial thoughts?
I don't even know if Niall's still on the call, but I feel like he's the Rob. That's how I'm feeling right now. I feel like, he's absolutely right. It's everything about our club's about and what our fans are about. And people have been saying this about football for a long time, but it's really, the last few months, everyone's on the same wavelength, I think. And you saw the kind of uproar with everything with the European Super League, and there needs to be big change in football from top to bottom. And ultimately, let's just get this word out. Let's get behind, help where we can, get listening, be open to ideas, give ideas. But yeah, no, I feel really, really energized by listening to that. Just like I do with the Robbo interview. So yeah, exciting times ahead. Let's make it work.
And Boise, your thoughts?
I think it's a great initiative, and I think Niall's right in terms of the parachute payments. The money in the Premier League is, I think we all agree, it's ridiculous, and it doesn't funnel down to grassroots football, does it? So I think if that can change, that seems one of the main focuses at the moment. Niall has on his agenda, and if that is something we can change and help out the rest of the football pyramid, especially after the pandemic, then that would be great. One of the things he did mention, George, I don't know if you know the answer to this one, but the events, if you can't make them live, will they be uploaded to YouTube or? Yeah,
it is something they're looking into. They are being uploaded to YouTube and hopefully onto the Fair Game website as well. So if you aren't able to attend them live, hopefully you will be able to watch them on catch up at a later date.
Yeah, I'd like to tune into some of them, especially one with Kieran Maguire from Price of Football. I'd find that one really interesting. So I'll see if I can make it live. If not, see if I can watch it on catch up.
Yeah, it should be a really fascinating, that one, because obviously Kieran, I think we all listen to the Price of Football. He's a very, very intelligent person. He speaks very passionately about a lot of the issues that are important to Fair Game. So I think that one especially will be well worth it. More information on that is available at the Fair Game website, which is fairgameuk.org. So I think that's all we've got time for tonight. So I just want to say thank you to my guest this evening, Anne-Marie Godfrey.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. And many more summer Sunday Night Lives, please, with the weather attached. Would be wonderful. But yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to Niall for doing all the work he's doing to try and change football. It's superb.
And Robert Boyce.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. It's been enjoyable. It's been intriguing listening to both Michael and Niall, and hopefully we add a bit of more silverware tomorrow when the Dons take on Tottenham Mitcham.
And obviously, thank you to our earlier guests, Michael Hamilton and Niall Cooper. And we'll sign off just for saying tomorrow, London Senior Cup, 1 p.m. kickoff at Hendon FC, Wimbledon versus Tooting and Mitcham. Tickets are available for pre-book only via the London FA website. And our old friend C Tickets, nice to see they are still somehow in business after the fiasco of 10 years ago.